decided that I wanted to start a booktube channel again. I say again because about 4 years ago I had a channel with like 6 videos uploaded to it, and then a lot of things happened to the point where I was no longer, 1, inspired to make videos, 2, I absolutely did not have the time to make videos, and 3, I was certainly not reading enough to be making YouTube videos over the last 4 years. Now things have shifted and I am consuming a lot more books, so I want to start again. And I thought, what better way to begin a new YouTube journey than to introduce you to who I am and explain who I am as a reader and talk about my reading journey from my childhood up until now. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. My name is Brittany. Welcome to this channel. I will of course be talking about books, and more books, because that is entirely who I am as a person. I would describe talking about books as my brand. So that's what we're going to do today and tomorrow and every day until I no longer want to do this anymore. Today's video is going to focus on my reading journey. I want to walk you through books that I read as a child, things that shaped me into the reader that I am today, talk about the kind of books that I consume these days. Growing up, I really had parents who encouraged me to read instead of watch TV. I remember going to the public library before I even went to school and picking out books. I remember like pointing out different pictures in the picture books that I would check out and like reading the pictures. I think that I knew some words before I went to kindergarten, and I am turning 33 years old this year. My school certainly did not teach us how to read until 1st grade. But once I did learn how to read in 1st grade, that was basically it. I was always reading from then on. I can't really remember any of my like childhood picture books that kind of formed me into a reader. I know that like things like The Magic School Bus were big when I was growing up. I think that they continue to be big because my kids like to be read those books. I think that I focused mainly on like the beginner chapter books that I would have read in elementary school, and for those I'm talking about things like Junie B. Jones. I know that another big popular series at that point would have been like the phasing in of the Magic Tree House. I know a bunch of the boys in my class would read those, but I was reading Junie B. Jones. From there, I would have morphed into more like middle grade chapter books, I guess, which would be like The Adventures of the Bailey School Kids, Animorphs, Goosebumps, those sort of things. Those were like my absolute jam when I got to like 2nd, 3rd grade. Specifically, I remember being obsessed with the Bailey School Kids, which is like teachers don't wear polka dots or Cupid doesn't flip hamburgers. And it was like these kids who believed that every single person that was an adult in their life was some sort of like paranormal creature. I was obsessed with those books. I remember reading every single one that my school library had and like begging my mom during Scholastic Book Fair to buy me more of those books when it would come time. And I still hunt for them today for my own children because I feel like my older son would just absolutely love them. I also remember these like diary books that I would check out from my school library. In particular, one was like the Diary of Cleopatra. These are like royal diaries, and they had the gold sprayed edges, and I was obsessed with those. The Cleopatra one and the Queen Elizabeth I ones were my favorites. There was also like a counterpart to it called the Dear America series, which I was not as huge of a fan of. It was like this girl coming over to the United States on the Titanic. I don't remember how that one ends. I think that was like one of the first books that I remember DNFing. And then there was one that was like on the Mayflower. I wasn't a huge fan of those ones as much as I was the Royal Diary. I think that I was reading those like 3rd, 4th grade, and I distinctly remember being 10 or 11 years old and in 4th grade when I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for the first time. And from there, that was like the pivotal point in my reading life. Once I read Harry Potter for the first time, there was no going back for me. I was set to be a reader for the rest of my life. Regardless of how I feel now about the author, those books absolutely changed my life as a reader. So I remember reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for the first time in 4th grade, and then very rapidly reading the 2nd and 3rd books. And the 4th book was released when I was in 4th grade in 2000. Well, the summer of 2000. Maybe I wasn't in 4th grade. I remember reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire in 5th grade and having to take the accelerated reader test, passing the test, getting like 45 AR points because the book is, you know, huge, and my teacher in 5th grade like making the class applaud me for passing a test on such a huge book. I can remember exactly what I was doing, where I purchased the releases of Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and Deathly Hallows, and I remember reading them so fast. Like, I'm talking staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning because I needed to know what was gonna happen next. And so Harry Potter, again, regardless of how I feel about the author now, definitely was a very important series of books in my reading journey. When I was in 5th grade, accelerated reader was like a huge thing that my school did. 5th grade was so hard for me because I was reading at such an advanced level that my school library didn't have books that I could check out that would fit my level. So I had to like get permission to go lower than my reading level so that I could at least get my AR points to like pass the class or whatever. So that was, you know, a highlight of my elementary school career. I do remember reading Little Women in 5th grade too and taking an AR test for that. And again, the teacher was like, oh my God, Brittany's done such a good job, which was mortifying for me and my little introverted self. As we progressed into like middle and high school, I can't remember very many books that I liked. I mean, I read The Outsiders in 8th grade, which was required for school. Of course, everybody loves The Outsiders. But like, other than books that I was reading for school in 7th and 8th and even maybe 9th grade, I don't remember very much of what I was reading for fun until about 10th grade, which is when I discovered this book called Old Magic. I literally can't remember who wrote it. The book is up on my shelf somewhere. I cannot remember who wrote it. I was so obsessed with that book in 10th grade. It was like set in Australia. This girl is a witch and a new boy comes to her school. His family's cursed, so she and this new boy go back in time to try to break the curse that is placed upon his family. It is such an incredible book. I was obsessed with it. I feel like I should reread it to see if I still love it so much. In 10th grade, I also remember having read like every single book that I owned, which wasn't a lot, and checking out like a ton of books from the library. Around 15 or 16, 10th grade, I remember stealing my mom's Harlequin romance novels, which in hindsight, definitely not something that she should have left around for me to find because she knew that I read everything at that point. But I read them, and I think that those books are what solidified me being like a romance reader today. Like I said before, I remember exactly what I was doing, where I was when my mom gave me the 5th, 6th, and 7th Harry Potter books. Literally, I distinctly remember my mom handing me Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows and saying, you are not allowed to stay up all night reading this. My brother and his wife are gonna be here tomorrow with the kids. I need you to be up and ready to do stuff with them because they lived kind of far away and they were coming to visit us. But I stayed up all night, and I remember waking up around 8 in the morning after being up until 4 and coming downstairs like bawling my eyes out and being like, oh my God, Mom, Fred's dead. And she's like, okay, great. I need you to go and like do what you need to do to get ready to go see your aunt and uncle. Also, 10th grade was like a huge year for me. So 10th grade, I read classics that I loved. My 10th grade English teacher introduced Of Mice and Men, and that solidified my love of Steinbeck. I've read 3 different books from Steinbeck and enjoyed each of them for vastly different reasons. Of Mice and Men was an absolutely traumatizing book that I read in 10th grade. We were assigned like 1 chapter for the first night that we got it, and I read the whole book because I simply could not put it down. And I remember walking into my English class the next day and being like, Mr. P, how could you do this to me? And he was like, Brittany, you cannot tell the class how the book ends. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna, but like, how dare you? Because, you know, I'm the type of reader that if the story is deep enough, I will cry, and I did cry. So I would say that a lot of the books that I was reading throughout high school were like fantasy, young adult stuff. And then of course the books that I was assigned for class. I even like branched out and read books that I wanted to read for English class that were not assigned. So for example, my 10th grade English teacher would not teach the same books every year. I was gonna be an English teacher, and that's absolutely what I would have done. So the grade above me, or the class above me, they got to read like To Kill a Mockingbird, The Catcher in the Rye, and then when I got to 10th grade, he was not teaching those books because he taught them the year prior. So I took it upon myself to read those books and enjoy them maybe more than I would have if they had been assigned to me. There is one book in particular that I remember being assigned to read in high school, and absolutely not reading it at all and using Spark Notes to help me pass the essay for my senior year English class, and that was Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. I read one page in that book, Spark Noted the rest, got 100% on the essay that I had to write for it, and so yeah, that's like one of my major high school accomplishments. After I graduated from high school, of course, I went to college, which was maybe not something that I should have done, but I did. I started out planning to teach elementary school, and so I, of course, was taking elementary education classes. Around midpoint first semester, freshman year, I was like, I'm not sure that this is what I want to do anymore, because I was taking a child development class and they made us go and do observations in an ICU, and the baby that we were there to observe actually ended up passing away when my class was supposed to go in and observe him. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to do something else. I loved English class when I was in high school. Let me switch tracks and major in secondary education with a focus on English. And so I went and I talked to one of my English professors and asked her to be my advisor. She agreed, and I started my second semester freshman year as a secondary ed major. But by the end of that year, I did my observations for one of my classes at my high school. I was like, you know what? I've completely changed my mind. I don't want to teach at all. So then I just majored in English, and I do have a bachelor's degree in English. But I did not get it the traditional way, because after my sophomore year, I ended up dropping out of college and joining the Navy. And this is the point where kind of reading is like a roller coaster. So after I dropped out of college, I went to boot camp. Of course, there's not a lot of reading that you can do at boot camp besides what is in the training book that they give you. So I was learning a lot about the Navy. And then when I got down to my second school after boot camp, I was of course learning about my job in the Navy. And that left very little time for me to consume any content that I would enjoy. So I did not really read for about a year. So after I finished all of my training for the Navy, I checked into my first command, and this is when I finally started to have more time to do things that I enjoyed. So I remember sitting down with my LPO, or a leading petty officer, and she asked me the kind of things that I like to do for fun, and I was like, oh, well, like, I really love reading. And so I started to get like all of my book recs from her. She recommended me 50 Shades of Grey, which was fun. And then she also recommended me this fantasy series called Dream Fever, which I finished the first 5 books in that series, and then it started to like switch tracks and follow a different character who I wasn't really interested in, so I did stop reading them. But I know one of my friends has continued reading that, and he is like obsessed with that series. So I did about 6 years in the Navy, and then I decided to get out and do other things with my life. So once I separated from the Navy, I finished my bachelor's degree, and then about a year went by and I was like, I want to go back to school, I want to get my master's degree. And that is when I applied to Syracuse University for their Library and Information Science graduate degree, which I obtained in December of 2020. I do not work in a library, but I really, really want to one day. Everything that I've done for my education has stemmed from my love of books. Before I got my master's degree, for the year that I was out of school, I spent a lot of time reading, and during that time in my life, I was actually writing out written reviews on a website that I created for every single book that I read, which was really fun, but it was also very time consuming because of the way that I was doing it. I also started my first booktube channel around that time, and then everything kind of fell off because I started my master's degree program, and then I started working a new job, which is very time consuming. And yeah, I just didn't feel like I was consuming content rapidly enough to review everything that I was reading anymore. Which brings us to today, where I am kind of switching tracks to have a new YouTube channel with more bookish content. After spending a whole year writing long form book reviews, I decided that I wanted to switch track, which is when I did start operating my original booktube channel. And then for this channel, I want to do book reviews where I'm talking about the books instead, just because I feel like I can convey more emotion about how I feel about the books in a video form than I can writing. I'm just not that I'm just not that talented of a writer. Like, I like writing, I'm just not that good at it. And besides that, like I've said before, talking about books with my friends is exactly my brand, so that's what I want to do. And then to like round out everything, I want to talk to you like rapid fire. These are the things that I like the most, these are the things that I like the least, so that you can know what to expect from me. So the things that I read the most are thrillers, romance, and young adult. The books that I read the least now are science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction. I will say this, I will give anything a try at least once. What I'm reading right now is between me, my Kindle, and God, and eventually I guess you will get to be a part of that. We'll talk mostly books, you'll get little snippets of other things that I love in life, but I really think that everything's always going to circle back to books because that's how it always is for me. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to see from me, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.